Good evening and welcome to our third episode on our alternative preparation course. And I emphasize the third episode because on the video that we posted, it said episode 2, and it's not episode 2, it's episode 3. So apologies for that. But
was that
this
you, Scott?
week, yes,
that
was me. Yes, I made a mistake.
Is that Mr. I am on social media course?
Not a social media course for a start.
A digital marketing course or something.
Yeah, and because of the stress you put me under to do things, yeah, exactly. Anyway,
does your tutor know that you've? Oh, that's lesson 1. Get your numbers right.
My tutor knew how much time I spent on Facebook and Twitter when I was supposed to be doing my course.
I know.
Thankfully, he doesn't appear to be on social media, so he won't know. Anyway, so
sorry, I digress.
Yeah, we did digress. Anyway, welcome everybody. This week we have what can only be described as how would we describe this as I don't know. I just like a very much a first where we have an adoption social worker present with us in the virtual room, and he is someone that I know of. I'm not going to say of old, from the past, shall we say? Because that makes us sound really old. Richard Marsh, welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Before we get started, do you just want to kind of give us a little bit of background on you, your experience, etc. as an intro?
Yeah, absolutely. I came to adoption social work really at the latter end of my career in local authority social work, and that was about 10 years. I think it was from 2010 to 2000 this year. I was an adoption, kinship care and fostering social worker in a permanency team somewhere, and that would look at the training courses, the preparation and assessment of adopters, and family finding for children, and supporting adopters and kinship carers in the care of the children afterwards. And I did lots of different things. Went to many family finding events.
Can I ask you why you got involved in, why you moved into sort of that area specifically? Because you mentioned, we were chatting before, you said you worked in sort of with children and families, but why did you move into that specific discipline?
Because, combination of reasons, really. I tend to change the focus of where I do my social work every 10 years or so anyway, because you can become bogged down, depressed, whatever. So I tended to do that. And as it happened, the adoption team had 2 people and it was supposed to have 8. And so I didn't really have to try very hard to get in. So
really, I remember those days. I do remember those days, actually. That's a really good, really good description of the way it happened.
Yeah.
Oh dear me, yeah. So how long? I mean, how long have you been in and out? You said 10 years. Is that 10 years, or is it longer than that? In terms of
me, I've been a social worker since 1987. So I've been a social worker for a long time. So and I've done all sorts. So and I've seen adoption from when I didn't know very much about it to when I know a lot more. So it's an education, and that's some of the things that I think people need to always bear in mind.
Yeah.
Richard, sorry to be really technical at the moment. The audio's kind of reached a point where it's really difficult to hear. Could you pop in and make your speakers? Because I don't want to do is kind of make it so we can't hear. So there we are. So Scott, talk amongst yourself, Scott, while he does some technical things.
It does some technical things.
What I think is really interesting is that we've never had. Again, just talk amongst yourselves.
Is that better?
You're upside down. Yeah, let's go with that. That's
yeah, let's try that. Yeah,
me?
See how that goes.
Is that better?
We'll try that.
We'll go with that.
The right way
we'll make an attempt.
Anyway.
Yeah, there's always a bit of a delay when we do these things as well, so it'll take a couple of minutes to see if it. So I was just going to ask you there, what I've forgotten what I was going to ask you now because of the technical issues. So when you went into the adoption team, what was that like from your perspective? Was it like oh, okay, or was it yeah, I can do this?
I think it was a bit of the people were really nice. I mean, and you find that a lot, I think, actually, that adoption social workers tend to be really okay people. And I think it was the combination of so there is a lot of bureaucracy involved, really, as well, and a lot of things that sort of have to be got right in a technical way. And it was a real sharp learning curve, really. But as a social worker, you get used to sort of being responsible for yourself and making sure that what you are setting out to do happens in a proper way, because basically you're left to get on with it quite a lot as a social worker. So I had that experience, so I could try and get on and do that, really. And so yeah, it is something to bear in mind as well, if you're that adoption social work, all social workers are fairly autonomous, but they work within a system. So they can be very different chalk and cheese social workers. So
yeah. So I know that you and Scott confessed this to me, that in the not too distant past, that you both had undertaken preparation courses, or sort of formulated them together, or co-hosted them. I'm not sure what you did together. But can you tell me a little bit about your experience of preparing applicants to become adopters? What's the social work thinking behind that? I mean, it could be quite obvious, but is there stuff going on there that we need to know about?
Well, there's three aspects, maybe. I mean, the thing that wherever you go to do your preparation, there will be a degree of sort of academic sort of theory learning, things like about child development, trauma-informed parenting, the effect of trauma on the brain, attachment issues. So there'll be some sort of subject learning that you can also do yourself as well, from reputable books and websites. Then there's the other part of the training is the interaction, the talking it through, the exploring things, and really understanding it. And then the third part is most training happens in groups, and it's the peer support and the feeding off one another and the understanding of shared and different experiences that bring people to adoption is, I think, and all those three things sort of combine to make it a valuable experience for the people who are preparing to be adopters. And so the people who will be running your courses, they will be listening to that and coming to some views. But the idea is to make it an enjoyable occasion, a positive experience, but a realistic experience of adoption, because it is it's not an easy thing, and it is something that isn't static either. That the adopter's experience 20 years ago is different from adopter's experience 10 years ago, different from the adopter's experience 5 years ago, because the world changes around adoption, and adoption moves on through the court systems. So that it is it is something that is always changing. So it isn't just, like I said, I've adopted, that's it, sort of thing, that the whole adoption experience changes over time, because children change, adopters change, families change, but also the social circumstances we live in change.
Yeah, I am. That's fascinating. The audio is kind of quite scratchy. I know you had some headphones. Do you think you could try and pop them in again? Sorry to bad jig you. I just kind of, what you're saying is fantastic, but I'm frustrated that people will want to hear it as best they can and afterwards as well. So, this is the stuff you hate, Scott, isn't it? Where I get really technical, where I get really funny with people and kind of ask people to.
That's why I drink wine.
So can you hear me through this mic?
Yeah, can hear you.
Is that
Just keep
better?
it where it is. Yeah.
It's better.
It's almost like there's a little bit of a like interference, if that makes sense, before you put them in. So I don't know what it is.
It's sort of fine it's fine. If we break, to get technical, if we break the signal, it resets your microphone and it stops interfering. So it might be, I don't know what's going on. It's some sort of voodoo magic.
Some social work voodoo magic.
Yes, maybe the social work gods are angry that you're speaking.
Oh dear me. I was just going to say, you mentioned there about the kind of flow of the preparation and stuff like that. I mean, so just to give some background, I helped to deliver and to kind of write some of the preparation training for the agency that Richard used to work for a few years ago now. We won't go as far as say how many. And I always remember kind of on the days where we were delivering it, it was quite fluid. But I mean, do you, as social workers, how fluid can you be in terms of changes that you make on the day, how you do things and stuff like that? You know, do you kind of sit there and gauge your audience, gauge their kind of I was going to use the word naivety there, but I don't know if that's the right word to use, but kind of, you know, what sort of preparation have they done? What sort of research have they done? I mean, is that something that you can do just by, you know, gauging the audience and then thinking, right, okay, we need to go further back on this? Or is it something that's kind of set in stone in terms of the training that you do?
The generally speaking, courses have a set program, and it's hard to get away from that. But within the program, it's the questions that are asked delivers the sort of depth or of the learning, if you like. So, for example, if some people have more knowledge than others. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people have more knowledge than others, and so people ask the questions and we answer them. And also, there's often timing courses for a more social aspect where people can come separately, individually, to ask specific questions and to be directed to different areas of learning, because the preparation courses, say you do a 2-hour session on a certain subject, that's really nowhere near enough. So people are advised to go off and learn more and reflect and where they can find out more information. And when it comes to doing the home study, doing the separate sessions with their individually allocated social worker, then they will be looked at in more detail and what it may mean in their family, in their own experience, perhaps of loss or something like that, you know. But so, and it would be explored in more detail. And the thing to remember is that it is a preparation course, and one never, as in most things in life, one never stops learning. So it's not like something you do once and then that's it, done, get on and we've adopted and just carry on. I mean, the whole business of adoption support is often about fine-tuning, relearning, reflecting back on experiences and seeing how the theory, you know, helps inform that. So the preparation really is the first, it's maybe the second step you really take within the local authority, whichever agency you're going with, to adoption, and it just carries on, you know, step after step after step.
Do you think that people realize that when they start the preparations, though? Because I mean, you know, when I think back to 2007 when I did it, I mean, it wasn't really spelled out that, you know, this was an ongoing process, and that part of the preparation training would also kind of be incorporated in home study. Bear in mind, the home study was a little bit different in terms of, you know, it was a one-stage process back then. I mean, has that changed? You know, when people kind of make that initial expression of interest, you know, is that something that's explained, or is it just something that, you know, you would assume that they know? Or
I don't know. I mean, I think I've delivered lots of those information sessions, and probably not, as my short answer. But I think it depends how experienced the person is who's delivering the training to actually point that out, really. But hopefully most preparation courses will have something called future adoption support in it. So that would indicate that it is a sort of lifelong learning experience, and depends on the people who can contribute, because sometimes you can have an adopter who would come along who's would have perhaps quite a challenging experience of being an adoptive parent, and feels confident enough to communicate that to a group of people who want to be adopters. And people like that on courses are really beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. Do you think that there's barriers to people do you think do you think that sometimes people come with the attitude that this is a hurdle that needs to be, or this is an experience, or a whatever, it's a moment that they need to just get through to get towards their goal? Is there people who is there barriers to people's preparation?
Yes.
Right.
I sometimes think that people think A follows B. That's not right, is it? But there's a stepping stone towards that end goal. People are very focused often on the end goal of getting to have that child, and that, in my view, is natural. But perhaps people should take a step back and look at the wider and the broader picture of that. Having the child is in many ways, there's sort of the fifth or sixth step really in being a parent. All the other steps come after. But because people have often struggled to have children, struggled to be accepted for fertility treatment, for example, and have experienced many losses on the way, it's understandable that, and social workers do understand that people do come with that sort of attitude and expectation. Hopefully the preparation course and other things will sensitively sort of put a different focus on things, because it's often adopters come with the idea of, I want to be a parent as my child, rather than thinking of the wider concept of where the child's come from, the need to adapt your parenting and your attitudes to the child that you end up adopting. And that is a different perspective that often people don't have, because why should they? It's not, they've come from a perspective of can't have something that I really want often. So obviously you get those adopters that are have a what do you call that thing, that they're really motivated to adopt from the child's perspective, or from a reason like that, rather than to have a child. And perhaps bring that different philosophy to the group. That's not the wrong word. Come from a different perspective.
No, that's fair. And one thing I wanted to ask you as well was, when I think back, again, I'm going back a lot of years, 2007, how do you squeeze all of the new knowledge that we've gained over the years, especially for, from a social work perspective, from medical, and, how do you squeeze all that into what I assume is still a kind of 4-day?
You don't, is the short answer. You don't.
Is it give them web links and say, right, go away and read this, and we're going to check you when you come back, kind of thing?
Yeah.
You don't. And one of the things that perhaps is a bit more common lately, in the last few years, has been the idea of that continued learning, and the children being more complex, the more the knowledge we have on trauma informed. Yeah. So I think our sound's gone. Carry on talking.
No, we can still hear you, don't worry.
We can hear you, don't worry. Yeah.
That's good. So I think that's the sort of pointed direction, and the self-directed learning is increasingly prevalent in actually lots of areas, not just of social worker, but in lots of areas of work. As a social worker, social workers are more encouraged to have self-directed learning now, because I think it's because local authorities can't really afford to rely on training courses. So the idea of that self-directed study is filtered to the social workers, and is now then filters on to people who are attending, in this case, adoption events.
Yeah. So
and that's what I would always say to people, is that they have to learn and reflect themselves. It's so important. And one of the things I always used to say to people was, find a book that you can easily access, i.e. easily read without being bored, of a adopter's or a child's and family experience of adoption, and that helps in your preparation. And read several of them during your period of preparation, and maybe reflect on them later.
Yeah. So thinking about that, then, when we think about, I know the local authority that you work for, and the kind of fostering teams, the adoption teams, they're all kind of interconnected in some way. What's your thoughts on then the kind of continued training that foster carers get that adopters don't get? I mean, do you think that should be a thing?
I think it's variable. I think it's variable, actually, Scott. I think it comes in and out. I mean, I remember when adopters and foster carers, and then latterly, but then it changed again in the end of 2020. Kinship carers would all access the same training. There would be a training program, and that anybody could access, really. But it all depends on which agency you go for. So perhaps one of the things that people should look at is, what does the agency actually have to offer? And the other thing as well is there are differences, because some foster care training is quite behavioural. It's for, supporting people with shorter term goals, perhaps. Whereas adopter and kinship training perhaps could be looked at a bit more therapeutic, relationship wise, because there's a different relationship, a different legal and actual relationship within the household if you're a foster carer than if you're a adopter or a kinship carer. So so I do think there is differences that should be noted, really, and paid attention to.
Yeah. Unusually, I've taken over all the conversations now, and I'm going to continue to do it by asking you another question, then I'll let Al come in. So my next question is, because, again, personal experience, as soon as that adoption order was granted, it was like, right, you can all bog off. We don't want any social workers around our door. And I think that's quite common, or it used to be quite common. I'm not sure it's so common now. I mean, is it, or is it, is that a thing in the past now, where people understand that actually social workers are with them forever?
Well, I think several things about that. One of which is that I think that that social work, as in lots of areas of public service, is resource-led rather than needs-led. He says, being slightly controversial there. So the agency tries to meet need, but it only has X amount of resource to do it with. So often the need is defined by the amount of resource, whatever the agency can put into it, which is something that's not mentioned very often. And if your social work team consists, say, of 8 people, and they say do, I don't know, 30 or 40 adoptions a year plus, then, over 10 years, that's 300. No way can they support that number of people. So there has to be an element of realism, going on there, really. So there needs to be a realistic view about that sort of thing, and that's one of the usefulness of the Adoption Support Fund, is that we talk here about training, but often what I find is that the support and therapy that people need post-adoption is that training revisited in a way, and made very specific to that situation that they're living in. So, and that's another way of doing it. That's why, the usefulness of having therapists and the Adoption Support Fund, so people can have bespoke support with their adoption.
Can I maybe ask you a kind of a question, to maybe sort of a final question to sum it up, and so we can think about, if there was anything you would change about how we prepare adopters, what would it be?
I think,
I've got him.
Well, I think
Excellent.
there's several things. I think one of the things is I would make it a rolling program, really, and make it more of a formal rolling program rather than the sort of support groups and the sort of more informal things that happen. So that's one of the things that I would do, because that's very important. And it is, and the other thing, I think I would make it easier for people to drop out, make it more socially acceptable, because it isn't for everybody in this. And if you look at some of that beyond the order stuff, where I said something like 60-something% of adopters really do need significant support post-adoption, and from their perspective, and of that half, it's both the children and the adopters need that level of significant support. So those sorts of figures, but agencies don't tend to want to sort of put people off. But maybe if as a sort of wider sort of, I don't know, society, that sounds pretentious, doesn't it? But a sort of a wider conversation about the challenges that happen, the trauma that these children and the hard work that adopting and being a kinship carer is. So I think that needs to feed in, as is the sort of, that's perhaps a little bit old-fashioned now, but I don't know, there's 2 families for life aspect of adoption, especially with social media, and that adopting isn't about having your child, it's about raising a child in your family and becoming a family. And a family doesn't mean that it excludes the other family. And I think that's some way to be able to interweave that in a constructive way would be really useful.
Yeah, interesting point.
No, I think so. Sorry. Yeah. Richard, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your views and thoughts. I'd love to get you back on. And when we get you back on, we're going to get you in a room and talk to you there, so we don't have to wrestle with technology and all the challenges of modern life, you know.
Exactly. I think it's because I probably bought this cheap microphone because I've seen it.
Well, we didn't like to say it.
Well, Al can help you with all that. Don't worry, he'll give you tips and hints. Honestly, it's normally me he gets frustrated with, but
just share the joy around. So we're going to say goodbye to the stream now.
Okay.
We're going to have a. Don't go anywhere just yet, Richard. But we're going to say goodbye to the general population.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, everybody. And
thank you very much.
Next week, Al? Who's next week?
I don't know who we've got next week.
Well, next week it's episode 4, and we will let you know during the week. How does that sound? Yeah,
might be
part 4.
Might be
part 4, episode 4, part 4.
Part 4. Yeah.
Part 4.
Well, it doesn't matter because you'll just call it whatever number you want anyway. Anyway, on that note, thank you very much, Richard, and thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Richard.
No, my pleasure. Bye.